Namaste and welcome to Daily News Simplified, the what, why and how of newspaper reading. Today we would be analyzing the Delhi edition of the Hindu newspaper of 12th April 2018. Now let us begin. Now we have taken this article from page 6. Now the reason this article is in the news because the olive ridley turtles have started hatching at the mass nesting site in the Rishikulia coast in the state of Odisha. Now olive ridley turtles are important with regards to your prelims examination, and we had covered the basic features that are required to be known with regards to your upcoming prelims examination in a much earlier video. So now let us again revise them. Now these olive ridley turtles are one of the smallest and most abundant of sea turtles found in the world. They are generally found in warm and tropical waters, primarily in the Pacific and the Indian Ocean. Now from your examination perspective, we need to understand their conservation. Now with an objective to conserve the olive ridley turtles, the UNDP Sea Turtle Project, or the United Nations Development Programme Sea Turtle Project, was initiated by the Wildlife Institute of India, which is located in Dehradun. Now the objective of this program is to conserve olive ridley turtles. Now the Wildlife Institute of India has been the implementing agency since 1999. Now this project is for the 10 coastal states in India, but especially Odisha. Now hopefully up till here you have understood the UNDP Sea Turtle Project, who is it being initiated by, what is its objective, and where it is being implemented. Now apart from this, in the International Union for Conservation of Nature and National Resources, or what is called the IUCN, the olive ridley turtles are classified as vulnerable. While in the Convention on International Trade in Endangered Species of Wildlife Fauna and Flora, or which is more commonly referred to as CITES, the olive ridley turtles are also listed in Appendix 1. By having it under Appendix 1, it is a species that is threatened with extinction and might be affected by its illegal trade. Now apart from this, olive ridley turtles are protected under the Wildlife Protection Act of 1972 and is listed as a protected species under Schedule 1 of the Wildlife Protection Act. Now moreover, you have also understood on how the olive ridley turtles are protected, how they are part of the IUCN list, how they are protected under the Convention on International Trade in Endangered Species of Wild Fauna and Flora, and how they are protected under the Wildlife Protection Act of 1972. Now as you might know, questions in your prelims examination has specifically been asked on sea turtles, on the IUCN list, CITES, and also on the Wildlife Protection Act of 1972. So it becomes important to understand on how the olive ridley turtles are linked with each of these lists. Now apart from this, what you should also know is the nesting sites of olive ridley turtles in Odisha. Even under the UNDP plan, Odisha has been emphasized for conservation of olive ridley turtles. Now the site which has also been referenced in the Hindu article is of Rishikulia. Apart from this, there are nesting sites on Robert Island and on Karimatta Beach. Now these three are the major nesting sites, apart from smaller sites that might occur across the coast of Odisha. Now let's move on to our next article. Now we have taken this article from page 11. Now the reason this article is in the news because two different draft nutritional guidelines have been prepared, wherein the Minister of Women and Child Development insists on an energy-dense factory-made nutrient packets for Anganwadi beneficiaries, while the Ministry of Women and Child Development itself has given a guideline which is in favor of sourcing food items such as dalia and khichdi prepared with locally available ingredients from self-help groups. And these two different guidelines have been submitted to the Niti Aayog. Now this news is in transition and we have to wait on how this news moves forward. But from this article, what is necessary to understand is about the Supplementary Nutrition Rules of 2017. Now the Supplementary Nutrition Rules of 2017 have been formed in pursuance of the provisions of the National Food Security Act of 2013. And the Supplementary Nutrition Rules of 2017 have been notified under Supplementary Nutrition Integrated Child Development Service Scheme of 2017. Now the aim of the Supplementary Nutrition Rules of 2017 is to bridge the gap between recommended dietary allowance and average daily intake. Now these supplementary rules have been formed to regulate entitlement for every pregnant woman, lactating mothers till 6 months after childbirth, and for every child in age group of 6 months to 6 years for 300 days. Now, hopefully, up till here, you have understood that the Supplementary Nutrition Rules of 2017 are in pursuance of the National Food Security Act of 2013 and that it has been notified under the Supplementary Nutrition Integrated Child Development Services Scheme 2017. Now, the aim of this rules of 2017 is to bridge the gap between recommended dietary allowance and the average daily intake. Now, the purpose of this new rules is to regulate entitlement for every pregnant woman, for lactating mothers till 6 months after childbirth, and for every child between the age group of 6 months to 6 years for 300 days in a year. Now, with regards to your upcoming prelims examination, keep in mind a small difference that the purpose of the Supplementary Nutrition Rules of 2017 is for every pregnant woman and every child, but not for every lactating mothers. And this is a small difference that you should remember with regards to your upcoming prelims examination. Now, specific features of the Supplementary Nutrition Rules of 2017 are cost norms and cost sharing, wherein it specifies the sharing of costs between center and state, among other factors. The second specific feature is of entitlement and nutrition standards, wherein it provides the features for such as place of serving the meal, among other factors. Now, the third and the last specific feature is of maintenance and quality of meal and its enforcement and monitoring. Now, hopefully, up till here, you have also understood the specific features of the Supplementary Nutrition Rules of 2017, wherein it provides the cost norms and cost sharing, such as the sharing of costs between center and state. Moreover, it also provides the entitlement and nutrition standards, such as the specific features of place of serving the meal, among other factors. And finally, it also provides for the maintenance and quality of meals and its enforcement and monitoring rules. Now, hopefully, up till here, you've understood the specific features, aim, and purpose of the Supplementary Nutrition Rules of 2017. Now, we have taken the lead editorial from page 8. Now, with regards to this article, the first thing that we'll do is understand about the Finance Commission from the perspective of your upcoming prelims examination. And then we will try to understand what has been the focus of the author in this lead article. Now, let us first understand about the Finance Commission. Now, the Finance Commission is a constitutional body and is constituted by the President of India. Now, the Finance Commission submits its report to the President of India, and it is the President of India that lays down the report before the Parliament of India. Now, the recommendations of the Finance Commission are advisory in nature and is not binding on the government. Now, the 15th Finance Commission will be headed by N.K. Singh and will recommend for a period of 5 years, commencing from 1st of April 2020. Now, apart from this, the 15th Finance Commission would be using the population data of the 2011 census as a base for tax devolution, as compared to the earlier Finance Commission which had used the 1971 census data. Now, hopefully, up till here, you have understood that the Finance Commission is a constitutional body and is constituted by the President of India. And the Finance Commission submits its report to the President of India, and it is the President who lays the report before the Parliament. Now, the recommendations of the Finance Commission are advisory in nature and are not binding on the Government of India. And the most recent Finance Commission, the 15th Finance Commission, will be headed by N.K. Singh and will give recommendations for 5 years commencing from 1st of April 2020. Now, one important feature of the 15th Finance Commission is that it would be using the population data of the 2011 census as compared to the earlier Finance Commissions which had used the 1971 census data, and this population data be used as a base for tax devolution while making its recommendation. Now, these points are important with regards to your upcoming prelims examination because previously a question has also been asked which was asked in the prelims of 2010 with regards to who of the following shall cause every recommendation made by the Finance Commission to be laid before the House of the Parliament. Now, let us understand the functions of the Finance Commission. Now, the Finance Commission is required to make recommendations on the distribution of the net proceeds of taxes to be shared between the centre and the states, and moreover, the allocation between the states of the respective shares of such proceeds. Moreover, the Finance Commission would make the recommendation on the principles which should govern the grant and aids of the revenue of the states out of the Consolidated Fund of India. The third function is the measures needed to augment the Consolidated Fund of the state to supplement the resources of the panchayat and the municipalities in the state. Now these measures are based on the recommendation of the State Finance Commission. Now the final function of the Finance Commission is to review the current status of the finance, deficit, debt level, cash balances, and fiscal discipline efforts of the Union and the states. And moreover, it can also recommend a fiscal consolidation roadmap for sound fiscal management. Now, hopefully, up till here, you've understood the functions of the Finance Commission, wherein it makes a recommendation on the distribution of the net proceed of taxes, on first, that are to be shared between center and state, and the second, on allocation between the states. Now, the second recommendation that the Finance Commission makes is based on the principles governing the grant in aids to the various states from the Consolidated Fund of India. The third function is to suggest measures to augment the consolidated fund of the state to support resources to the panchayat and the municipality within that respective state. And these measures would be based on the recommendations of the State Finance Commission. And finally, the Finance Commission would review the finance deficit, debt levels, cash balances, fiscal discipline efforts of the Union and states, and wherein it could recommend a fiscal consolidation roadmap for sound fiscal management. Now hopefully you have understood the basic features of the Finance Commission. Now let us understand what has been the focus of the lead editorial. Now the lead editorial gives a critique of the terms of reference of the 15th Finance Commission. Now let us understand these critiques from the perspective of your mains examination. Now according to the author, various state taxes have been subsumed in the GST or the Goods or Services Tax, and this has adversely impacted or negatively impacted the revenue in some state. Hence, according to the author, the terms of tax devolution by the 15th Finance Commission thereby gains significance, wherein those states which have been adversely impacted by the GST should be taken into consideration by the 15th Finance Commission. Now, the second critique given by the author is that by taking the population data from the 2011 census, it would hamper certain states, especially the southern states, who have taken measures to reduce population in the past. Now earlier, the 1971 census data was used by the Finance Commission, but from 1971 till 2011, various states, especially the southern states, have made significant improvement in decreasing population growth. But this has not been the case in several northern states. And since the Finance Commission devolutes taxes or revenue based on one of the parameter of population by using the 2011 census, it would certainly hamper those states which have taken measures for population control. Now the third critique given by the author is that control on populist measures would directly hamper every state government's policies with regards to the welfare of its citizens. Now the 15th Finance Commission has proposed certain performance-based incentives, wherein one of the performance on which a state would be judged is the control or lack of expenditure on populist measures. And according to the author, by arbitrarily defining what might be a populist measures, the 15th Finance Commission directly hampers the democratic polity or the federal framework and limits every state government's ability to frame policies for the welfare of its citizens. Now the fourth critique given by the author is the increase in devolution from 32% to 42% has actually led to the reduction of allocations through several central sponsored schemes. Now the central government has increased the devolution of revenue from 32% to 42% that would be given to the states. But because of this, the central government has also cut several central sponsored schemes under which states are given funds. And therefore, according to the author, state funds should not be cut because the center has increased the devolution from 32% to 42%. Now the fifth point given by the author is that the discontinuation of devolution of revenue deficit grants may go against the principle of cooperative federalism. Now the sixth point given by the author is that the Finance Commission should take a residual approach to vertical devolution. Now by vertical devolution, it means the devolution of taxes from center to state. And by residual approach, it means distributing what has been left over after the requirements of the central government. Now it means that, now according to the author, the Finance Commission should not take a residual approach wherein it distributes the revenue which is left over after providing for the requirements of the central government. Wherein, if rupees 100 has to be devoluted, the center has asked for rupees 60, and then what is left over of rupees 40 is distributed among the states. And what the author is trying to recommend is to have a fair distribution of from center to state. Now the last critique given by the author is that performance-based grants may result in micromanagement of states by the center. Now the Commission has considered proposing measurable performance-based incentives for states, such as efforts made by the states in expansion and deepening of tax net under GST, progress made in replacement rate of population growth, achievement in flagship schemes of the Government of India, control or lack of expenditure on populist measures, progress made in sanitation, solid waste management, among other various performance-based incentives that the 15th Finance Commission may consider. And the author has criticized this is that performance-based incentives across so many areas may actually result in micromanagement of states by the center, wherein the center then may decide on which state has made progress in sanitation or in solid waste management, among other various performance-based grants. Now, hopefully, up till here, you have understood the critique given by the author in this lead editorial with regards to the term of reference of the 15th Finance Commission. And so, now with this, we move on to the next article. Now, we have taken this article from page 13. Now, the reason this article is in the news because the Union Cabinet has delegated the power to award hydrocarbon blocks to successful bidders to the Petroleum and Finance Minister. Now, what is required to understand from this article is about the hydrocarbon exploration and licensing policy, or HELP. Now, the hydrocarbon exploration and licensing policy was adopted by the Government of India in 2016, and it indicated the new contractual and fiscal model for award of hydrocarbon acreages towards exploration and production. Now, this policy is applicable for all future contracts to be awarded. Now, the four main points under this policy, wherein the first one is that there would be a uniform license for exploration and production for all forms of hydrocarbon. The second feature of this policy is that it would have an open acreage policy. Now, acreage means an extent or area in acres. Now, the third feature is that it would have an easy to administer revenue sharing model. And the fourth and the last point is that it would have a marketing and pricing freedom for the crude oil and natural gas produced. Now, hopefully up till here you have understood that the hydrocarbon exploration and licensing policy was adopted by the Government of India in 2016, and that it would have a new contractual and fiscal model for award of hydrocarbon acreages for exploration and production. Now, the main features of this policy is that it would have a uniform license for exploration and production for all forms of hydrocarbon. The second feature of this policy is that it would have an open acreage policy, wherein acreage means the extent or an area in acres. The third feature of this policy is that it would have easy to administer revenue sharing model. Now, the fourth and the last main feature of this policy is that it would have marketing and pricing freedom for crude oil and natural gas production. Now, by all forms of hydrocarbon, it means shale gas or oil, gas hydrates, among other both conventional and unconventional oil and gas resources. And this revenue sharing model would be between the company that has undertaken the license and the Government of India. Now, the hydrocarbon exploration and licensing policy had replaced the earlier new exploration licensing policy. Now, it replaced the new exploration licensing policy by first having a change in the fiscal model, wherein the new exploration licensing policy was based on the profit sharing model, meaning that the revenue to the government would go after the cost recovery, while under the HELP policy has a revenue sharing model, wherein revenue to the government would be given on production. Now, hopefully up till here you have also understood that the hydrocarbon exploration and licensing policy replaced the earlier new exploration licensing policy, and the HELP policy replaced the NILP policy by a change in the fiscal model, wherein the earlier policy had a profit sharing model wherein the Government of India gets the revenue after cost recovery, meaning profit from the product itself, while under the new scheme, the Government of India gets the revenue on a revenue sharing model on production. And so now with this, we move on to the next article. Now we have taken this article from page 3. Now from this article, what we should understand with regards to your upcoming prelims examination is about western disturbances and the effect it has on the harvest of crop, in particular wheat. Now, western disturbances mainly originate over the Mediterranean Sea and in certain cases over the Caspian Sea or the Black Sea. Now, these westerly disturbances travel eastwards from the Mediterranean Sea or the Caspian or the Black Sea, such as from the Mediterranean Sea under the influence of westerly jet stream. Now, it is mainly responsible for winter rains in the Indus-Ganga plains and snowfall in the Himalayan belt. Now the snow also sustains the flow of water in Himalayan rivers. Now the western disturbances are highly useful for the rabi crops when the crop is standing. Now hopefully up till here you have understood that the western disturbances mainly originate over the Mediterranean Sea and in some cases over the Caspian Sea or the Black Sea, and it travels eastwards such as from the Mediterranean Sea under the influence of the westerly jet stream. Now these western disturbances is mainly responsible for winter rains in the Indus-Ganga plains and for snowfall in the Himalayan belt, and this snowfall then further sustains the flow of the Himalayan rivers, especially in the summer season. Now these western disturbances is highly beneficial for rabi crops, but when the crop is standing. Now if the western disturbances come late during the time of harvesting of rabi crop, then the westerly disturbances badly affect the rabi crop. And this is because at the time of harvesting, the crop is already dried, and any rainfall at this time will make the crop unfit for threshing. Now, hopefully, up till here, you have understood that if the western disturbances come late and if they occur at the time of harvesting of the rabi crops like wheat, the western disturbances badly affect the rabi crops. And this is because, since at the time of harvesting, the crop is dried, and the rainfall through the western disturbances makes the crop unfit for threshing. Now, with this, we come to an end in the analysis of today's paper. Now, we move on to the question for today.